Think about the word inheritance for a second. What comes to mind? For most of us, it's money, a piece of land, a house, or maybe a vintage watch passed down through generations. Or maybe your mind goes straight to biology, how you got your mother's laugh, your grandfather's height, or the exact shape of your nose. And those things are real. Those things are tangible. You can point to them, hold them, measure them. But there is another kind of inheritance. It's one of the most powerful things we pass down. Yet you can't see it, you can't touch it, and you certainly can't bank it. It's our emotional baggage. There's a quote that hits like a ton of bricks the first time you hear it. Refusing to heal is just a slow way of making sure your children have to. It's blunt, it's heartbreaking, and it's deeply, profoundly true. Today, we are going to spend some real time with this idea. We're going to go deep because this isn't something that deserves a surface level conversation. This is the kind of topic that, if you actually sit with it, could change not just your life, but the lives of the people who aren't even born yet. We are going to talk about what emotional inheritance actually means. We are going to talk about where it comes from, how it travels, and most importantly, how it stops, how you could be the one to stop it. Because whether we realize it or not, the unhealed wounds we carry today are drafting the blueprint for our children's tomorrow. Let's start at the very beginning. Let's talk about how emotional wounds get created in the first place. Life is tough, and almost everyone, regardless of background, regardless of privilege, goes through something painful. It might be childhood neglect, a parent who is physically present but emotionally completely absent, a toxic relationship that slowly convinced you that you were too much or not enough, a sudden, devastating loss, a deep-seated shame that grew silently over decades, never spoken aloud, but always felt. These experiences leave marks, and I want to be really intentional with my language here, because I think we tend to undersell just how significant those marks are. We call them baggage, like it's just some extra weight in a suitcase. We call them issues, like they're minor technical difficulties. But what they actually are, at the neurological, psychological, and physiological level, is wounds. A wound, something that was injured, something that, if left untreated, doesn't just stay the same. It festers, it gets infected, it spreads. Now, if you get a deep physical cut on your arm, you don't look at it and say, well, if I pretend it's not there, I'll probably be fine. You don't put a long sleeve shirt over a bleeding gash and pretend you're whole. You clean it, you bandage it, you give it time to heal, and if it's bad enough, you go see a doctor. No rational person ignores a physical wound. We understand instinctively that ignoring it makes things worse. But with emotional wounds, we tend to do the exact opposite. We try to ignore the pain. We mask it with anger. We bury it under work, under alcohol, under scrolling for 3 hours before we fall asleep. We pack it tight under busyness so we never have to sit still long enough to feel it. We tell ourselves it was a long time ago, or other people have it worse, or the biggest lie of all, I'm fine. And here's the hard truth. Trapped pain doesn't just vanish. It doesn't dissolve with time if it's being ignored. Think about that for a second. Time is not a healer on its own. Time is just time. What heals is the work you do within that time. Without the work, the pain just sits there, buried alive, waiting for a way out. And eventually, inevitably, that trapped pain leaks. Now, I want to pause here for a moment because the next part is very important. When we talk about trauma or emotional pain showing up in a person's life, we expect it to look a certain way. We expect the person to be visibly struggling. We expect tears, withdrawal, obvious distress. But most of the time, it doesn't look like that at all. Unhealed pain is a master of disguise. It doesn't usually announce itself as pain. It disguises itself as personality. It hides inside the normal rhythms of everyday behavior. And because it looks so ordinary, so familiar, so normal, we don't recognize it for what it is. Let me walk you through what it actually looks like. It looks like a short temper, sudden, disproportionate flashes of anger, the kind where you snap at the people you love most over the smallest mistakes. A glass gets knocked over, someone's running 5 minutes late, a plan changes, and the reaction is completely out of proportion to the situation. And then, often, there's a wave of guilt afterward. Why did I react like that? That was nothing. Some part of you knows that the reaction was never really about the glass. It may look like an inability to express affection. Saying I love you feels awkward. Offering a warm hug, a word of affirmation, a simple I'm proud of you feels like trying to speak a language you were never taught. Not because you didn't feel it, but because nobody showed you how to say it. Because the house you grew up in was emotionally closed, and you absorbed that closure into your bones without even knowing it. It looks like a need for strict control, micromanaging everything and everyone around you, an inability to delegate, to trust, to let things be imperfect. What looks like high standards or perfectionism on the outside is often something much more fragile on the inside. A nervous system that learned a long time ago that when things felt out of control, something bad happened. So now you grip tighter and tighter and tighter. It looks like an atmosphere of anxiety, homes where there's an unspoken tension in the air, where everyone is tuned into the emotional temperature of the room, constantly reading the mood of one particular person, where children learn before they even have words for it, how to tiptoe, how to make themselves small, how to not be the thing that sets someone off. You might think you are keeping your struggles to yourself. You might tell yourself, I'm dealing with this internally. I'm not bringing it home. But your home knows. Your body broadcasts what your mouth refuses to say. Your nervous system is always communicating, and the people who are closest to you are always listening, whether they know it or not. Children especially are like emotional tuning forks. They pick up the frequencies adults can't even hear themselves emitting. I want you to picture something. Picture a relay race, 4 runners on a track, and the whole race comes down to one thing: passing the baton cleanly from one person to the next. The fastest runner in the world can't win the race if they fumble the handoff. Now imagine a parent who was constantly criticized when they were young, put down, belittled, made to feel like they would never be good enough. They carry that pain into adulthood. It's their baton, heavy, rusted, worn down from years of being carried. Now they have children of their own, and because they never healed that wound of worthlessness, they tend to do one of two things. The first option, they repeat history. They grow up and they constantly criticize their own children. They pass on the exact same impossible standards of perfectionism that broke them. They use the phrase, I went through it and I turned out fine, as a shield, as a way to justify why they're doing the same thing to their own kid. They don't realize they're handing the baton over. They think they're teaching strength, but they're passing on damage. The second option is sneakier, and I think this one catches a lot of people off guard. They try so hard to not be like their critical parent that they swing too far the other way. They become completely detached, passive, emotionally unavailable. They physically show up, but they're not really there. They're distant and hands-off, not because they don't care, but because they're terrified. Terrified if they get too close, if they're too involved, their own toxicity will leak out, so they pull back. they build a wall. They keep their kids at arm's length because they don't trust themselves. Both paths, two completely different choices, and yet the result is exactly the same. The child is left with a wound of their own. In the first scenario, they learn that nothing they do is ever good enough. In the second, they learn that they are not worth staying close to. In both cases, the parent didn't actually fix the problem. They didn't drop the baton. They just changed how they handed it off to the next runner. And what happens next? The child grows up. They become an adult with their own life, their own relationship, maybe their own kids. And now they are the ones sitting in a therapist's office trying to untangle something that happened before they had the vocabulary to even describe it. They are spending their own time, their own money, and their own emotional energy learning how to manage anxiety that was given to them, learning how to build the kind of relationship that was never modeled for them, learning how to feel safe in their own skin. They are paying for a debt they didn't run up. Think about how unfair that is. If someone stole your identity and ran up tens of thousands of dollars of credit card debt in your name, you would be furious. You would call the police. You would fight it with everything you had. Because the unfairness of it is obvious. You can see the numbers. You can point to the damage. Yet, millions of adults wake up every single day carrying massive loads of emotional debt, anxiety disorders, attachment issues, chronic anger, self-worth that was stolen before they were old enough to protect it. And because it's invisible, we don't call it debt. We call it personality. We call it just how our family is. We say, my dad was like that. His dad was like that. It's just how we are. As if it were some proud family tradition. As if the transmission of pain were the same as the transmission of a receipt or a cultural holiday. But it's not a personality trait. It's an unpaid bill, and it will keep getting passed down through the family, compounding interest until someone decides to pay it. Let me say that again. Pain is a debt that always gets paid by someone. There is no getting around this law of emotional physics. The only question is whether you pay it through the hard, uncomfortable work of healing, or whether your children pay it for you later with their peace of mind. Now, I want to be completely honest with you here. Not just motivational, actually honest. Choosing to heal is terrifying. It is, without exaggeration, one of the hardest things a human being can choose to do. And I think it does people a disservice when we make it sound easy, when we say things like, just let it go, or choose happiness, as if it were a simple matter of decision. It is not. Healing means looking directly into a mirror at your ugliest memories, your deepest shames, the things you did to survive that you're not proud of, the coping mechanisms that got you through hard times but are now destroying the good things in your life. It means sitting in discomfort for long stretches of time without running. It means asking for help. And for many people, asking for help is one of the most threatening things imaginable. Because asking for help means admitting you need it. Healing means admitting out loud, I am hurt, I am struggling, and some of the way I act are hurting the people around me. This is a devastating sentence to say, and an incredibly brave one. And here is why it's so tempting not to say it. In the short term, it is much easier to just keep doing what you've always done. The familiar dysfunction is at least predictable. You know its shape, you know its rhythms. Healing, on the other hand, requires stepping into the unknown, changing patterns you've had for decades, feeling things you buried for a reason. So instead, we reach for the comforting phrases. That's just the way I am. I turned out fine. Let's talk about the second one specifically, because I think it deserves to be taken apart piece by piece. I turned out fine. Did you? Does fine mean you survive on 4 hours of sleep because your brain won't shut off at night? Does fine mean you lose your temper over something small and spend the next hour hating yourself for it? because somewhere deep in your nervous system, vulnerability still registers as danger? Does fine mean you're still carrying around a weight you've been carrying so long you've forgotten it's there? Surviving is not the same as thriving. Getting through is not the same as being whole. And fine is the lowest possible bar. It is a ceiling masquerading as a floor. Turning out fine is not the goal. Being whole is the goal. I want to get concrete here because I think one of the barriers to healing is that it feels abstract. It feels like something that happens in a therapist's office with a lot of crying, and then eventually you're fixed. And that picture, while not entirely inaccurate, misses the texture of what healing actually looks like in daily life. Healing looks like the pause. It looks like the moment when you feel that familiar surge of anger coming on, the heat in your chest, the tightening in your jaw, and instead of letting it run you, you take one breath, just one, and you ask yourself, what is this actually about? That moment, that one breath, that one question, that is healing in action. Healing looks like the repair. You will lose your cool. You will snap. You will say something you regret. That's not failure. That's being human. What matters is what you do next. Do you stonewall? Do you pretend it didn't happen? Or do you go back to the person, sit down at their level, and say, I'm sorry. I was wrong. You didn't deserve that. That repair, that act of coming back, owning the mistake, and putting the relationship above your ego is profoundly healing, not just for you, but the person receiving it. Think about what happens when a parent does this with a child. Imagine a parent who loses their temper, raises their voice over something small, and then, a few minutes later, takes a breath, walks back in the room, gets down to the child's eye level, and says, Hey, I need to apologize to you. I yelled at you, and you didn't deserve that. I was feeling really stressed, but that is my stress to manage, not yours. You are safe. I love you. Do you understand what is happening in that moment? You are teaching that child that the reality is real, that what they perceived, that something felt wrong, was accurate. You are teaching them that adults make mistakes and then take accountability for them. You are showing them in real time what a healthy relationship looks like. You are literally rewiring their nervous system. You are replacing the lesson, when an adult is angry, I am unsafe, with, when there is conflict, it can be repaired. This is a gift beyond measure, and it costs you nothing except a little humility. Healing also looks like getting help, going to therapy, doing the reading, having the hard conversations with a partner or sibling or trusted friend, joining a support group, practicing the skills, because emotional regulation is a skill. It can be learned. It can be built. The fact that it was never taught to you is a tragedy, but it is not a life sentence. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Part of what keeps people stuck isn't the pain itself. It's the story they've built around the pain. When we've been carrying something for a long time, we don't just carry the wound. We carry the entire narrative that explains it, defends it, and protects it. My parents did the best they could with what they had. That one is interesting because it's often true, and true or not, it doesn't change the impact of what was passed down. You can love your parents, you can understand them, you can forgive them, and still choose not to carry the thing they passed to you. Forgiveness and healing are related, but they are not the same transaction. If I look at this stuff, I'll fall apart. Also interesting, because the fear of falling apart, the fear that if we let ourselves feel the thing, we will be overwhelmed by it, is actually one of the most common barriers to healing. And here is what I want to say to that. You have already been carrying this weight. The idea that acknowledging it will be more painful than silently hauling it everywhere you go, that is the wound trying to protect itself. That is the pain trying to keep its leash on you. My childhood wasn't that bad. Maybe, probably, Most of us didn't experience the kind of dramatic, obvious trauma that gets written about, but emotional neglect, emotional unavailability, walking on eggshells, growing up in an anxious household, these things leave marks even when there are no bruises. Trauma doesn't need to be cinematic to be real. This is just who I am. This one might be the most heartbreaking because it's the story that has given up. It's the story that has decided the wound is the person, that the coping mechanism is the identity, that the anger, the walls, the distance, that's just you, and that's just the way it is. It is not the way it is. Who you are and the patterns you inherited are two different things. You were not born with your defenses. You built them, and what can be built can be rebuilt. I want to talk about what it means to actually break the cycle, because I think this phrase gets thrown around a lot, and it can start to feel like a bumper sticker. Break the cycle. Great. How? Breaking the cycle is not a single dramatic moment. It's not one conversation, one revelation, one breakthrough session. It is a daily decision, sometimes a minute-to-minute decision. It is the decision to stop and ask why you're reacting the way you're reacting. It is the willingness to be wrong. It is the practice of curiosity over defensiveness. It means recognizing that your children's behavior is often a mirror of your emotional climate, and instead of blaming them for what they're reflecting back at you, turning your attention to what you're putting into the room. It means understanding the concept of co-regulation. Here's what that means. Children cannot regulate their own nervous system independently. Their brains are not developed enough. So what they do unconsciously is borrow regulation from the adults around them. If you are dysregulated, if you are carrying chronic anxiety, chronic anger, chronic emotional instability, your child's nervous system learns to match yours. They can't help it. It's not a choice. It's biology. This means that when you do the work to regulate yourself, when you learn to breathe through stress, to name emotions, to come back to calm, you are not just healing yourself, you are creating a nervous system environment that your children can borrow from. You are giving them the template for safety. That is enormous. That is one of the most powerful things a parent can do. And it asks nothing of the child. It asks everything of you. Breaking the cycle also means being willing to name things. Children who grow up in households where emotions are never named, where no one ever says, I'm feeling scared, or I was wrong, or that hurt me, those children grow up without an emotional vocabulary. And without vocabulary, you cannot process. And without processing, the pain just goes underground, into the body, into behavior, into the next generation. Naming things out loud, even imperfectly, begins to break the silence that allows the pattern to continue. I want to end by talking about what is on the other side of this. Because healing is hard, and it's fair to ask, is it worth it? Is the work worth it? Is the discomfort, the cost, the vulnerability, the sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back messiness of it all, is it actually worth it? Yes, because here's what is waiting on the other side. On the other side is a relationship with your children where they are not afraid of you, where they don't tiptoe, where they bring their problems instead of hiding them, where the word home means safety, not survival. On the other side is a version of yourself that is no longer running from your own past, that is no longer spending enormous amounts of energy pretending to be fine, that has room, actual room, to be present, to be joyful, to be curious about life, about your children, about your own potential. On the other side is the freedom to choose your reactions rather than being enslaved by them, to feel something and decide what to do with it rather than having it run the show while you watch from the back row of your own life. On the other side is the end of the relay race. The baton gets dropped, not passed, dropped by you intentionally, because you saw it clearly enough to know you didn't have to carry it anymore. There's a concept in intergenerational trauma work called the corrective experience. It's a moment or a series of moments where a person experiences something that directly contradicts their deepest wound. If your wound is, I'm not safe, the corrective experience is genuine safety. If your wound is, I'm not enough, the corrective experience is being loved unconditionally. If your wound is, I'm invisible, the corrective experience is being truly, deeply seen. You can be the corrective experience for your children. Every time you choose patience over explosion, repair over silence, presence over distraction, you are creating a corrective experience. You are rewriting a story that has been telling itself in your family for generations. That is the most important work any human being can do. Not the job, not the house, not the legacy that gets measured in numbers. This inner work, this healing, this willingness to look honestly at yourself and then change. This is the work that outlasts everything. Let me bring this all the way back to where we started. Inheritance. You don't get to choose what was given to you. You don't get to choose the home you were raised in, the patterns you absorbed before you had the words for them, the wounds you carried into adulthood without even knowing they were there. But you get to choose what you pass on. That is the power that no one can take from you, and that too many people never fully claim. You get to decide, right now, today, what the inheritance looks like going forward. You can decide that the most valuable thing you leave behind is not a house, not a savings account, not a name, but a child who grew up feeling safe, who grew up knowing that love is steady and reliable, who grew up watching an adult handle difficulty with grace, not perfectly, but with intention. That child will grow up and build healthier relationships. They will struggle less with the invisible weight that you are carrying right now. They will be able to give their own children something they got from you, a childhood they don't have to spend their adulthood recovering from. That is the gift. That is what's on the table. It won't be a perfect process. You will stumble. There will be days the old patterns win, days the progress feels invisible, days you wonder if any of it is making a difference. Healing is not a straight line. It's a winding road with setbacks, and some days you'll feel like you're going backward. But here's what I want you to hold on to when that happens. The fact that you are aware of the slip up, that you can see it, name it, and feel bad about it, that awareness is a cycle breaking. The generation before you might not have seen it all. You see it. That means something has already changed. You are not your wounds. You are not your patterns. You are not the baton. You are the runner who decided to stop the race. Take care of yourself. Do the work. And remember, the most heroic thing you can do, the thing that matters most, the thing your children will carry long after everything else is forgotten, is the work you do on yourself today. It changes everything for tomorrow.